Now let's go back a little, because to understand what is happening today, there is a need to understand what has been building up for months. Iran did not wake up one morning and decide to cause trouble. No, this has been a slow, deliberate, calculated strategy, step by step, move by move, like a chess player who has been planning 10 moves ahead while everyone else was looking at the board thinking the game was almost over. The attacks on shipping lanes in and around the Gulf did not start yesterday. They started quietly, small incidents. A tanker here, a drone sighting there. The kind of news that gets buried on page 7 of the newspaper and forgotten by lunchtime. But those in power, those with satellites and intelligence reports sitting on their desks every morning before breakfast, they saw the pattern. They saw exactly where this was heading. Iran's message was never spoken out loud. It did not need to be. The message was written in fire and metal, sent through the water and the air. The message was simple. This region belongs to us as much as it belongs to anyone else. And if the world wants to keep squeezing Iran with sanctions, with pressure, with isolation, then the world should be ready to feel some of that pressure right back. And the Gulf states heard that message loud and clear. Now, here is where it gets very interesting. Because the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, these are not small, weak countries. These are some of the wealthiest nations on earth. They have armies, they have alliances with America, they have F-16s and Patriot missile systems and billions of dollars sitting in sovereign wealth funds. So why are they stepping back? Why are exports slowing down? Why are some shipments being quietly delayed or rerouted without any press conference, without any official announcement? The answer is not weakness, and it is definitely not fear in the simple sense of that word. The answer is something far more calculated, far more dangerous. And it connects directly to a deal, a conversation, a negotiation that has been happening in the shadows for a very long time. Stay with this story. Do not move, because part 3 is where the real secret finally breaks open. And if this story is making sense so far, share it with one person right now. One person who needs to understand what is really happening in the world today. Something is happening right now in the Middle East that the big television stations are not telling you the full story about. And today, right here, the truth comes out. The Gulf, that stretch of water sitting between Arabia and Iran, for decades, it has been the heartbeat of the world's oil supply. Every single day, millions and millions of barrels of oil pass through that region, tankers the size of small towns, loaded with fuel that keeps the lights on in Europe, Asia, and America. That same oil that puts petrol in cars, that heats homes, that runs factories across the globe, it all comes through there. But something has changed, something big. Something that the world's most powerful governments are watching very, very carefully right now. Iran has not stopped. The attacks are continuing. And the Gulf states, those oil-rich kingdoms that have always kept the taps running no matter what, are now doing something nobody expected. They are pulling back, quietly, carefully, but they are pulling back. Now here is the question every single person on this planet should be asking. Why now? What is really going on behind those palace doors in Riyadh, in Abu Dhabi, in Doha? Because what is being said in public and what is actually happening behind closed doors are two very different things. This is not just about oil. This is about power. This is about survival. And this is about a secret calculation that Gulf leaders have been making for months now. A calculation that could change the price of everything in every market in the world. Stay right here. Do not go anywhere. Because what is coming next in this story is the part they never wanted the public to know. And if this channel has ever given value, this is the story that proves it. Hit that subscribe button right now because this is only part 1. Here's something that almost nobody is talking about, and it is the piece of the puzzle that makes everything else make sense. For years, the Gulf states and Iran have been enemies. That is the story the world has been told. Sunni versus Shia, Arab versus Persian, American allies versus American enemies. That has been the official narrative, repeated so many times that most people stopped questioning it. But in 2023, something happened that shook the entire diplomatic world. Saudi Arabia and Iran shook hands. A deal brokered by China, of all countries, two nations that had not had formal relations for years, suddenly sitting at the same table, agreeing to restore ties. Embassies reopened. Phone calls were made. Quiet conversations began. Now, at the time, many analysts said it was symbolic, just politics, just optics, nothing real would come from it. Those analysts were wrong, because what that handshake actually did was open a back channel, a private line of communication between Riyadh and Tehran that did not go through Washington, that did not go through London or Brussels, a direct line, Arab to Persian, Gulf to Gulf. And through that line, messages have been passing back and forth that the American government has not been fully briefed on. Think about that for a moment. The United States has spent trillions of dollars, trillions, maintaining its presence and influence in the Gulf region. Bases, warships, diplomatic missions, all to keep a hand on the most important energy supply chain on the planet. And right now, the two biggest players in that region are talking to each other directly, without America in the room. So when Iran escalates its attacks on shipping, and the Gulf states respond not with anger but with silence and export slowdowns, it is worth asking a very serious question. Is this reaction a sign of fear, or is it a sign of coordination? Because slowing down exports does something very specific. It drives up the global price of oil. And when oil prices go up, both Iran and the Gulf states make more money from every single barrel they do sell. Let that sit for a moment. This story is not just geopolitics. This is economics. This is energy warfare being fought not with missiles alone, but with supply chains and market manipulation that hits every ordinary person in every country on earth, right in the wallet. Part 4 is where the full picture comes together, where the names, the numbers, and the consequences land. Keep watching. And if this story is opening eyes, subscribe to this channel right now, because this kind of reporting does not come every day. Now let us talk about the numbers. Because when the politics gets confusing, the numbers always tell the truth. The Strait of Hormuz, that narrow stretch of water, just 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. Every single day, roughly 20% of the entire world's oil supply passes through that strait. 1/5 of all the oil on Earth, moving through a channel so narrow that if two large tankers passed each other, there would barely be room to breathe. Iran sits right on the edge of that strait, right there, like a hand resting on a tap that supplies water to an entire city. And everyone in the world knows it. Iran knows it. The Gulf states know it. Washington knows it. Beijing knows it. Now, here is what has been happening in recent weeks that the mainstream media keeps reporting as separate, unconnected stories. Iranian naval vessels have been increasing their presence near shipping lanes. Insurance companies that cover oil tankers have been raising their premiums sharply, making it more expensive to move oil through the region. Several major shipping companies have quietly rerouted vessels, adding days and thousands of dollars to each journey just to avoid certain corridors. At the same time, export figures from two major Gulf producers showed unexpected dips. Not dramatic, Not the kind of numbers that cause immediate panic, but consistent. And in the world of global energy markets, consistent unexplained dips do not happen by accident. The result? Oil prices crept upward, slowly at first, then with more momentum. And every dollar that oil price rises, billions of additional revenue flows into the treasuries of every oil-producing nation in the Gulf, including Iran. Now connect that to the back-channel conversations happening between Riyadh and Tehran. Connect it to China's role as the broker of that 2023 handshake. And then connect it to one more fact that almost nobody is reporting. China is Iran's biggest oil customer. China has also been deepening its investment relationships with Saudi Arabia and the UAE at the same time that its relationship with the United States has been growing colder and more tense. So what is really being built here? What is the architecture of this new arrangement taking shape right now beneath the surface of the news cycle? Is a new energy alliance, not official, not announced, not signed in any ceremony, but real, functional, and powerful enough to reshape how the world pays for energy for the next generation. America is watching this, and America is very uncomfortable. Part 5 brings it all home. Stay right there. So here's where everything lands. Here's the part that matters most to every single person watching this right now. Whether they live in Lagos or London, Nairobi or New York, Accra or Auckland, what happens in the Gulf does not stay in the Gulf. It never has. And right now, the consequences of what is unfolding there are already moving through the global economy like a slow tide. Quiet but unstoppable. When oil export slowdowns combine with ongoing Iranian pressure on shipping lanes, and when the Gulf states choose calculated silence over loud resistance, the global supply of energy tightens, not dramatically overnight, but enough to push fuel prices higher in countries that can least afford it. Enough to increase the cost of transporting food, medicine, and manufactured goods across continents. Enough to squeeze ordinary families in ways that have nothing to do with decisions they ever made. In Africa, nations that import refined petroleum products will feel this in fuel queues and transport costs within weeks of any sustained disruption. In Asia, factories that run on imported energy will adjust their margins or pass costs on to consumers. In Europe, governments already struggling with energy insecurity since the Russia-Ukraine war will find themselves facing another layer of vulnerability. And in America, the political pressure will be enormous, because Washington built its entire Middle East strategy on the assumption that the Gulf states would always remain firmly in the Western orbit, always choose the American alliance over any other relationship, always keep the oil flowing on terms that suited the West. That assumption is now being tested in ways it has never been tested before. The Gulf states are not abandoning America. Let that be clear. These are not reckless governments. They are extraordinarily careful, extraordinarily strategic. But they are sending a message, a quiet, expensive, unmistakable message, that they have options now, that China is present, that Iran is manageable through direct conversation rather than only through confrontation, and that their first loyalty is to their own survival and their own prosperity. Iran understands this, and Iran is using it. Every attack on a shipping lane is not just a military act, it is a negotiating move, a reminder to the Gulf states that peace in the region has a price. And that price is being discussed right now in conversations that will never appear in any official transcript. This is the real story, not the missiles, not the tankers, not the rising oil prices on the ticker at the bottom of the news screen. The real story is a fundamental shift in who holds power over the world's most critical resource. And that shift is happening right now, quietly, deliberately and with consequences that will stretch decades into the future. The world is being reorganized. The old certainties are loosening. And the people who will navigate what comes next are the ones paying attention today, not tomorrow, not next year, but right now. This channel exists to make sure that the people watching it are always among those who understand what is actually happening in the world before it becomes impossible to ignore. If this story delivered that, then subscribing to this channel is the smartest 2-second decision of the day. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because the truth about the Gulf is only just beginning to come out.